And welcome back to Top Cheddar Sports. It is Wednesday again, my dudes, so we're going to be talking some NHL hockey, and this will be the final two teams season previews that we will be doing here this offseason, as we have just about wrapped up every other team to this point, and the regular season is starting in just a little over a week, so it is very, very exciting times. So today, as mentioned last week, we will be finishing up with the Chicago Blackhawks and the reigning champions St. Louis Blues. But first, let's get into some more restricted free agent news. As everyone knows, Brayden Point and the Tampa Bay Lightning have agreed to terms on a 3-year deal that pays him $6.75 million per. I think this is a phenomenal contract for the Lightning. Very team-friendly deal. I think the Lightning are big winners in this, and I think possibly the Calgary Flames, Winnipeg Jets, and Colorado Avalanche will also turn out to be big winners from this deal, as Brayden Point kind of settling for 6.75. I'm sure that's ringing hopeful thoughts throughout the other fan bases that, Tkachuk, Connor, Laine, and Rantanen will now all maybe sign for a little less than before thought with Mitch Martin and what he got. So I thought this was very interesting. Obviously, Brayden Point is worth a lot more than that. This is a steal for the Lightning, but it is a bridge deal type. I still think 3 years is a huge win for the Lightning at this value, because 3 years is kind of the longest bridge deal you can get if you really want to call it a bridge deal. So I thought this was really surprising for me. But I'm really happy that he did sign, because Brayden Point's a guy that you want to see out on the ice. He's a very entertaining player. This goes for all the restricted free agents. I hope they all sign soon. Checking in on what's going on with those other restricted free agents. In terms of Matthew Tkachuk, there's literally been no news on that front. Really just nothing to report. This is typical of Brad Tripling and the Calgary Flames. We all remember a few years ago, Johnny Gaudreau wound up going into the season still unsigned. There was literally just no news the entire offseason on it, and then all of a sudden, boom, he signed. So I kind of expect the same thing to happen with Tkachuk. I think he will miss not a lot, but I think he will miss about a month of the season or so, and then they'll strike a deal kind of just out of nowhere. So this doesn't surprise me, but yeah, there's really nothing to report on Matthew Tkachuk. As for Kyle Connor and Patrick, they both of the Winnipeg Jets, big restricted free agents, came out a couple days ago. Kyle Connor's agent said that the reports that the Jets and Connor were getting close to a deal were completely false, and that the Jets and Connor unfortunately still remain very far apart in their contract negotiations. So that's obviously bad news for the Jets. It's bad news for hockey fans. So we'll kind of see where that goes. And as for Patrick Laine and the Jets, they're also still both very far apart. Laine still is very open to being traded elsewhere. Well, his rights would get traded. Maybe a sign and trade happens. Who knows? The news on the Laine front has actually been kind of quiet of late, with really nothing new to report other than, they're still far apart. So likely I would expect Connor and Laine to also kind of go into the regular season before anything happens there. And hopefully it won't last too long, much with Tkachuk. Hopefully it won't last too long and they'll get back on the ice soon, because obviously all these players are fun to watch. Last big restricted free agent not to sign is Mikko Rantanen. We kind of got a little bit of an update on this one. Mikko Rantanen looked at Mitch Martin's deal and said, I want that. I want at least $10 million per. The Avs think he's worth... The Avs are being kind of weird with this. So they think he's worth that, yet they won't budge over more than $9 million per. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. I would expect the Avs to give in a little bit and Rantanen to also give in a little bit. And they'll probably settle around an annual value of around 9.375, 9.5, something around that range per. And I would expect the max 8-year deal from Mikko Rantanen as well. I don't think that one's going to go into the regular season. I expect that to get wrapped up very soon here. I hope also that it doesn't go into the regular season, but we'll kind of see on that front. again, we at least got a bit of information from Mikko Rantanen, but still negotiations are being kept kind of quiet and kind of secretive there. And the last restricted free agent to sign as well that we didn't get to mention is Thomas Chabot with the Ottawa Senators. So Chabot inks an 8 that will pay him $8 million per. So the 22-year-old defenseman obviously had a very good rookie season, and I think he's literally just 2 years away from being a top 3 defenseman in the NHL. So good on the Senators locking him up to what will turn out to be, in just a matter of a year or two, be a very team-friendly deal in my opinion. Really high on this guy. So good on them getting that done, especially where, they've been under a lot of scrutiny with, we don't pay our players, we're a cheap franchise. A lot of people were thinking they were just going to trade Chabot, much like they did with Karlsson. But no, they lock him up. So really, really like that move for the Senators, really worth mentioning. Good for Thomas Chabot, good for the Senators. And he will be playing for the next 8 years in Ottawa. So that's exciting for Sens fans. Passionate fan base. Happy for them. So that'll do it for the kind of news of the week, if you will. So let's get into these last 2 season previews. Let's start with the Chicago Blackhawks, who finished 6th in the Central Division last year. I have the Blackhawks trending straight up. I love what they're doing. Obviously, Jonathan Toews had a huge bounce-back year last year. Dropped, over 30 goals, over 40 assists. He was around 80 points, I think. I don't know off the top of my head, but a very good bounce-back year for him. And Patrick Kane, still Patrick Kane. Alex DeBrincat came into his own, realized his potential. He was a 40-plus goal scorer. It's still about those 3. That's still the core. But what else did they bring in? So, forward-wise, the Hawks bring in Zach Smith, Alex Nylander, and Ryan Carpenter. So Ryan Carpenter, I like as to fill out that 4th, maybe 3rd line. Nice little depth piece. Same with Zach Smith. Zach Smith played in Ottawa the past few years. He was a solid forward. He got more ice time than he deserved, I think. I think he belongs on a 3rd line. I think he will kind of thrive in a 3rd line role. They kind of asked him to do too much in Ottawa, so I think this is a perfect situation for Zach Smith. And then Alex Nylander actually in preseason has been skating alongside of Toews and Kane on that top line. So that's an interesting thing to watch. Very young winger there. And I kind of like that pairing. So we'll see if they keep him there, and we'll see how he does. But he could be a sneaky good player and a sneaky good fantasy pick for those fantasy hockey players out there. Defensively, the Blackhawks got a little younger on defense. Obviously, Duncan Keith still leads that defensive core, but he is not getting any younger, and same with Brent Seabrook. They're both still there, but they add Oli Mata and Calvin DeHaan to that mix. 2 solid defenders. They're younger. They're not super young, but they're younger. I like the addition. It's better than what they had there last year. Neither of these guys is an elite defenseman by any means, but they're solid and they can eat some minutes. And I think, like I said, ultimately looking at what they had last year, this is an upgrade for the Blackhawks. So I'm okay with it. I like it. But the biggest piece for the Blackhawks is signing Robin Lehner, Vezina finalist, to pair with Corey Crawford. And I love this for a lot of reasons. Both goalies have had injury problems in their careers. But now you have that insurance. You're going to have a very, very good goalie starting every single night now in Chicago, whether it's Crawford or Leonard. And I think that's really going to help them out in the long run. So I actually have the Chicago Blackhawks back in the playoffs this year due to all of these reasons. I have them finishing 5th in the Central Division and being the 2nd wildcard team in the Western Conference. Which brings us to your reigning champion St. Louis Blues, who finished 3rd in the Central last year. I have them trending down. The Blues spent most of their offseason re-signing a lot of their guys, which makes sense, and that's what you want to do after you win the Cup. They lost a few pieces. What they brought in, they bring in Zach Sanford, Mike Vescioni, and Derek Pouliot. None of these guys are huge additions and great additions to this team. They're solid players. They're not going to be anything that puts them over the top. And I look at what the Blues did last year. They got hot at the right time. They're a talented team. They have good pieces. I think they will just miss out on the playoffs this year. I have them finishing right behind Chicago, and I mean right behind Chicago. Sixth in this division. Just missing the playoffs. I think they will be the 9th seed in the West. They got hot at the right time last year. I don't think they're the team we saw win the Cup. I also don't think they're the team we saw that was the worst team in the league in the first half of last year. I think they're somewhere in the middle. I think they're a decent hockey team, but I look up and down this roster and I just don't really like the depth I see, aside from goaltending wise. And I don't know. I think the division, we already talked about Nashville, Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, Chicago, how they got better, and I think they're just going to kind of leapfrog right over the St. Louis Blues this year, and I have the Blues just missing out on the playoffs, finishing 6th. So to kind of conclude where I have the Central Division, I have the Nashville Predators in 1st, I have Colorado Avalanche in 2nd, the Dallas Stars 3rd, the Winnipeg Jets 4th, Chicago Blackhawks 5th, St. Louis Blues 6th, and the Minnesota Wild finishing 7th this year. And that'll do it, folks, for our season previews. If this is the first video you're watching, we have covered every single team now to this point. So go ahead, click on that Top Cheddar Hockey playlist, and look back for your favorite team and see what we have to say on them. As always, leave a like, leave a comment, smash that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, and let me know in the comments what you think these two teams will do, what you think about these restricted free agent situations that we still have, and let me know how wrong you think I am. And as always, thank you for watching, and tune in tomorrow as Victor will tackle the NFL and give his predictions for week